How's it going, everybody? Welcome to OP Entertainment. I'm Omar Darwish.
I'm Pratik Cherian.
And finally, episode 2 of Loki is long awaited, finally here. Pratik, we're going to go a little bit spoiler-free up top and then get into some spoilers towards the end. Overall, what were your thoughts on this episode, Pratik, if you had to sum it up?
If I had to sum it up, I would say this episode was more uneven than the first episode.
Agreed.
Without being any more or less enjoyable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like whatever you thought about the first episode of this show, this second episode is not going to drastically change your mind one way or the other.
I think that I agree for
Yeah.
some of that. I think that maybe the first 10, 15 minutes of this episode may have you thinking this show is going in a weird direction, but I think it quickly corrects itself from that.
Like I said, uneven. So like there's definitely sections of it where you're just like, what is this? What are you
I
doing?
think uneven is a good way to describe maybe the first half, but I feel like it really does find its footing along the 15, 20-minute mark. And in a 50-minute show, that's a little late.
30, 35. But okay.
Agree to disagree. We'll get into it with the spoilers. I really love where they're taking Loki. By the end of this episode, I cannot wait to see where it's going from here. I really like Owen Wilson's character, Mobius. Not Morbius. Mobius.
Right, Mobius.
I really feel like they're giving us a lot more empathy for him and sympathy, like as far as like his place, and like what where he thinks everything is going.
Yeah, I'll say that I told myself I wasn't going to, like, the thing that I said I wasn't going to do with this show was, like, start thinking about what this means for the MCU as a whole and, like, the larger scheme. And I'm not going to start speculating about, like, who the true villains are or any of that stuff. But that's the stuff that's exciting. Like, that's exactly what I came away from this episode, like, excited about. And so I'm like, oh, man, they can introduce mutants. And this is how they could spin off Spider-Man. And whoa.
You're too excited for Pratik.
All of it.
Chill.
Like, yeah, it's just like, wow. And I'm doing everything I said I wasn't going to do.
So you're where I was with WandaVision after, like, the third episode, right? Fourth episode?
Kind of, sort of, yeah. But yes. Yeah,
Professor X is going to show up, Pratik. I almost bought the Funko Pop just to put it on the desk when it happens.
I bought the Magneto Pop just ready to go, just because. But this isn't a WandaVision
As far as the direction, the pacing, the tone of the episode, how do you think that fares versus the first episode?
Still kind of uneven. Mm-hmm. I mean, overall,
this was one of the worst paced. I mean, out of the two.
Yeah, out of the two, this one is worst paced. I thought that, I will say, I did think that Tom Hiddleston's acting was, like, I loved it in the first one. I thought it was better in this one. While at the same time, like, I thought the script was slightly, like, more uneven. I thought the script in the first one was more on point.
Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I'm kind of where you were in the last episode where you said you felt like his performance was kind of uneven. He seemed like he was kind of just on autopilot.
Yeah.
I felt like that for the first 15, 20 minutes of this show. But it like I said, quickly corrects that.
Yeah, I think it's more about, like, the way it was written. It's like, what more do you want him to do? Like, for the lines he's given and for what he's supposed to be conveying, like, he's doing everything he can. Like, honestly, I thought he was way more, like, charming and likable, and his personality was in the character a lot more, while the script itself was just not there. I mean, I won't agree with the whole episode. The script wasn't there.
No, I mean specifically for that first part.
I got you.
Yeah. So I think we've given our overall thoughts of it as being as non-spoilery as we can.
Sure. So yeah, let's just break down the episode. Minor spoilers
for the
here.
breakdown.
We're gonna save the, like, major spoilers for the very end, kind of
the
like
big reveal. No,
the part where Wanda shows up. I mean, no.
I really didn't expect Batman to jump through that portal at the end, dude. That was nuts.
No wonder Owen Wilson was talking about Batman in the Marvel universe.
I just imagine somebody just, like, quickly shutting their computer right now. Like, we had this kind of debate last week about how deep or how not deep the show is and how philosophical the show is and its ability to be philosophical. Just curious, do we still have that disagreement, or, like, what are you thinking?
I don't think we have that disagreement anymore, because I think you've come around to my side.
You're right. Without getting super...
You know what? I'm right because I believe I'm right. So that's all I need to say.
As long as it's not predestined, right? Look, I think that, to not retread on old stuff, I think that this show is asking a lot more deeper philosophical questions, and I think you don't believe that, though.
I don't think this show is asking I don't think this show. I think what the show is doing is it's asking some questions. It's not doing.
It's just nothing new.
Well, it's not. What it's not doing is it's not connecting it back to why me as a viewer should like ask these same questions about my world, or why like I should care about it. That's where I really think.
You don't think the allegory of it all though?
I think so. What I think is, I think that if you're the kind of person that can take thoughts and ideas and larger themes out of a piece of media, and then you're going to sit there and like think about how those thoughts and themes apply to you, then yes, you're going to be like, wow, this show's asking some deep questions. I feel like so much of the show is dedicated to trying to ask these questions, and I think that the execution of how it's doing it, I think that's where you and I disagree, where I don't think the show is doing it very well in the context of the show. But I can see how, like, if you're somebody that thinks critically, that like likes applying larger themes to your own life, like I can see why you would say that. So I will say I don't want to come across like, oh, the show is just dumb. Like I'm not saying that necessarily, because I can see how like somebody could apply it and like be like, wow, this show is very deep. But I think it requires, not to insult anybody, but I think it requires like a certain level of critical thinking and intelligence. And I don't know that like the larger population has.
So what you're saying is this show is too smart for the average audience member?
No. I think that a smart audience member will take great things out of the show. I think that a smart show can do it in such a way that kind of forces even the dumbest audience member to ask these questions. That's the difference.
All right.
That might be enough.
I'll still work that about in my head for a little bit. We'll come back to that. As far as the reveal we get at the end, major spoilers.
Do you not want to talk about anything else that happened in this episode first?
Well, okay, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I'm not me, but like you're the one who's super excited about this show. I'm the one who keeps saying nothing happens.
Well, my biggest takeaway from this show is that it's not just every single CSI investigative show we've gotten before, because they are asking deeper questions, and not just that. I mean, the time travel aspect of it, and
I said I wasn't going to be negative, but not to be negative.
Oh,
but
you?
I do think that like, for me as a consumer, what I was promised and what I've had, the time travel part of this might be like the most disappointing. Because like from trailers, from like what we were expecting beforehand, I was kind of expecting like a time hopping fun adventure.
I think we can still get that. There were 2 episodes in.
I mean, and we could, but so far out of those 2 episodes, I feel like
we haven't gotten that.
I feel like all of the time jumps have kind of been slightly disappointing.
They've been played for jokes for the most part. The D.B. Cooper and the Pompeii.
Well, but the D.B. Cooper wasn't even a time jump. That was just a flashback, and that was hilarious. Yeah. I loved that. But like good. Every time they jump into a different time period, it does like, I don't know. I feel like there's no purpose to it.
I think they're just getting started with that.
I hope so.
We're not
right.
seeing a bigger scope of the worlds they're trapped, the time periods. So far, we've only gone to Earth. Like, right?
Yeah.
Like,
that's also
so.
True. Yes.
I feel like once we get beyond that, maybe we'll get some more cool time traveling. And we see some shots in the trailer. They're on different planets and whatnot. So we're gonna get to that.
Hopefully,
point.
it's more fun later on. Another question I have.
Sure.
Did you notice, like, were there points in this show where you're just like, yeah, you filmed this during COVID, didn't you?
So because it was all inside?
Well, no, not that. So like the scene I'm thinking of specifically is when Mobius is talking to like his boss, whatever her name is, I can't remember. Like
Kang's wife.
Sure. But like, did you notice how like they're sitting like super far apart, and like the camera shots, like she would be talking to him, but it would be just her in the frame. And then it would cut and it'd be like he's talking, but it's just him in the frame, versus like usually we might see like both of them in the frame, or like a back and forth, or like maybe they interact. I don't know. I felt like there were
I didn't notice. Or
like there was another part, and it was like a background thing, but like Mobius and Loki were talking to each other, and they were at the table together. And then I'm looking in the background, and there's a bunch of like TVA agents, and it's like there's one sitting, space, another one sitting. I'm like, they're all sitting 6 feet apart, aren't they? Like, they're definitely socially distancing on this show.
I'll say this.
I don't know. I noticed that. It jumped out to me a ton.
If that is the case, it worked enough that I didn't notice it. And I feel like I noticed stuff like that. I'm pretty.
Go back and, you know what? The point where, like, when they jumped to Pompeii and you were like, why aren't there any people in this scene? Like,
well, that was because they don't want to show a bunch of people getting annihilated by a volcano.
But the volcano hadn't happened yet. But it's like, oh, right, because they're like, you said that you noticed it and you're like, oh, they don't want to show a bunch of people. I noticed it and I'm like, oh, it's because they're again trying to like distance, and it's weird for this time period for people to be like.
I did notice that
distanced.
in that exchange between Loki and Mobius, he was very far away from Mobius.
Yeah.
I thought it was because something was going to come out of nowhere and hit him, like kind of like the shot of Mantis in Guardians 2 when she gets hit with the thing because she's kind of off to the side, but. Nothing kind of happened to that. So I could see that.
Go back and watch it.
I don't know
and
if
pay
I would.
attention to where people are sitting and how far apart they are, and the way this show like tries to use camera perspective to make them seem closer.
Regardless,
than they are.
is that going to affect your?
No, not at all.
No.
I'm just pointing it out. Like 2020 things.
Sure. 2020 things. Why not? I didn't notice any of that so far, but maybe we'll see. Maybe if I go back and watch it.
Go back and watch it. You'll notice it.
Back to the show though. What do you think as far as where we're headed from here? We get the Lady Loki reveal.
God.
I said spoilers.
I said to put a bigger spoiler warning in the front.
We said spoilers, and then you went off on a thing, and we got back to it. I think people will be okay.
Spoilers for the big reveal at the end.
I already prefaced this, but fine. If you guys are going to be mad about it, be mad about it. Lady Loki is in this.
Do you buy that?
That it's Lady Loki?
Yeah.
You think that it's just Tom Hiddleston Loki, but he's in a different form?
No. I don't think that's a Loki variant.
I'm interested and expand on this. Okay. Elaborate.
All right, so I will. So I think that character is actually Enchantress. Here's why. One, they both look similar, and I'll put up a side by side so you can kind of see what I'm talking about.
I might be dumb on this. Isn't Enchantress a DC villain?
No.
Isn't that what
there might be an
Isn't that the villain from Suicide Squad, the first one?
Yes, but there's also a Marvel one.
Okay, cool.
There is a Marvel Enchantress who's a Thor.
They're like, "Woo, girl!" at the end.
Yeah.
Wasn't it like? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But there is a Marvel Enchantress. She's like a super classic Thor villain. But then there's also a newer one who was given powers by Loki. Mm-hmm. Points here. I think the appearance of this Lady Loki looks closer to Enchantress in the comics than like Lady
Loki.
Lady Loki in the comics is Loki who took over a body that was supposed to be for Sif when all of the Asgardians were coming back from Ragnarok. Mm-hmm. So like again, kind of looks more like with the dark hair and the dark features and like kind of looking more like that than this character.
Why would the TVA think that it's a Loki variant then?
That and so that's kind of where I'm getting. So in the comics, the second Enchantress is given her powers by Loki. So like her powers are kind of by Loki.
Yeah.
So that's why they would think that. And the reason why, and one of the beyond just the appearance, I also think that one, the way that this Lady Loki like is possessing people is different than we've ever seen like Loki actually act. Like this is a completely different power set.
I'll give you that. Yeah, she's not just morphing into people.
Yeah, and when she does it the first time,
he says it's enchantment.
Yeah, enchantment, cute.
But he also acknowledges that it's something that he knows of, that so maybe potentially he can do it as well.
Yeah, but I don't know. There's too many of these little things where I'm sitting back and going like, are we sure that's Lady Loki? Are we absolutely sure that's the case?
I gotta tell you, as a recovering guy on this because of WandaVision and me speculating, I feel like you're going too deep on that point.
And I thought about that.
Maybe. Nobody thought Evan Peters was going to show up in WandaVision. So
I thought about that, but I also think that. So you and I probably both agree that whether that's Lady Loki or Enchantress, that's not a bad guy in this, right?
No, but I think that's what they were trying to prove with the whole bubblegum thing in the line where he's like talking about good people aren't all good, bad people aren't all bad or whatever. Like she's probably not a bad. She's just as bad as Loki is, I'm assuming.
Which
makes me lean towards she's less Lady Loki.
So when we get like in the beginning where we first like see her in action, they've got the holding out for a hero like music playing.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just feel like it's a little on the nose that like this is like, oh, this is the bad guy, but you're giving that person like traditional hero music.
I mean, it wasn't as on the nose as the Captain Marvel. Like, was it like a Barbie girl or something? What came on? Like the girl power song or whatever?
I had that entire movie. It's
just
a repressed memory.
You like, just hang it upside down like the scrolls are on you. All I'm saying is Marvel is in adverse to that. Like they've done, they've done on the nose stuff like that.
You're right. I don't know. I just think that one, they're not doing things to set this person up as a villain.
I agree. I think they're more setting her up to be either a love interest to Loki, which is kind of weird, but also kind of like
that's weird.
They're narcissistic, so they can be. Who knows? I'm not here to argue the morals of different timeline versions of people. And if it is Enchantress, then I'm not saying that it is Loki. Like it could be Enchantress. It could be a different entity, right? That we're not even aware of. However, I think that the TVA, if they are as powerful as they claim, they would know if it's a Loki variant or not. Unless this Enchantress is putting on some sort of spell to throw them on.
I do think that. I do wonder how much like they actually know of magic, because like when Loki did that like spell to dry himself off,
they're like, what is that?
Yeah. So like they're not.
I mean, we learn in this episode how sheltered they really are. Like he's never seen a jet ski. Like there's a lot of things that they don't know about. I mean, even in the first episode when
he didn't know
like, what's a fish? Yeah.
So I don't know. I have questions about that.
I really feel like
as far as like motives and things. Also, and my last point
go ahead.
Is
I feel like
if this is if this is our like villain of this show, are you really introducing the villain in like episode 2?
We're just saying that because in our last 2 Marvel shows we don't get a villain reveal till like the last episode. That's the only reason why I think we feel like they're jumping the gun on this.
This is just kind of early.
Well, but also
I feel like this is a misdirect.
I think you're wrong though. I think they introduced the villain in the first episode, and it's not the TVA, but it's the Timekeepers.
Yeah, you're probably. I think you're right about that.
I'm still thinking that my theory is correct from previous podcast, where I think that the Timekeepers maybe are Kang, or either way, they want this timeline to work out for them, because if they make this timeline happen, everything works out for the Timekeepers.
I feel like if the and I said this in the last episode, if the Timekeepers are not the eventual villains, and if they're not done away with by the end of this episode, I think that
season,
end of the season, I think that it calls into question like serious questions about like the Marvel universe as a whole. Yeah, like I really think they need to make them the villains, and I think they are.
Especially when Loki had said like in the last episode, like, how come I've never heard of you? Makes me feel like maybe they are relatively new. Like they were all born from the Timekeepers, the TVA anyway, right? So maybe they were just put in there, and all these memories are fake, kind of like a Blade Runner 2049 situation.
Maybe. I mean, when you're talking about time, like what is new, what is old? Are they in the future or not?
Like, you know what though? I feel like whenever you involve time travel and stuff, it really makes it. There's plot holes everywhere. I'm hoping with this that they can tighten this. Oh yeah, we're just running around a wheel with these debates, but. I just feel like with this, I trust the writing, and I trust that this is going to narratively make sense at the end. And I don't know. I'm super excited to see where we're going from here.
I'm excited. So the last thing I'm excited for from this episode is at the very end where...
Spoilers.
I mean... We did that already. God.
Did we?
I definitely did. So at the very end, where she drops the like reset charges all across the timeline, you kind of see branches like splintering off everywhere.
Speaking of, not to cut you off, I'm confused a little bit on what those reset charges do exactly. They're not destroying the planet; they're destroying the life on the planet.
They're destroying the timeline. Like they're destroying the time.
But you see it like erase the soccer ball and everything, but the grass is still there, right? So like, what exactly are they erasing?
Yeah, I mean. That's
life on the planet.
There's good questions on that. I mean, I think going off of like the graphic we see in this episode, you kind of see like the timeline splintering off, and then like after they do the charge, it goes back. And
so are they just rewinding to before that point happened?
That's kind of what I think. Maybe the working.
But then Loki says that's a nice way of saying you're destroying it or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So
he does say you're destroying everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we also learn from this episode that like once a branch has like hit a certain point, it can't be reset anymore.
Yeah. So what do they do then?
I assume that it hasn't happened yet. And that's like part of what interests me about like all of these branching timelines, where they all look like they're getting close to not being able to be reset. And I wonder if I said I wasn't going to do this, but I wonder if that's not how like Marvel introduces like mutants.
Stick to your words, Patrick.
Because if stuff has happened up and down the timeline, then they can easily be like, oh yeah, mutants were always here. It's like a product of whatever happened in the timeline, and like
is that not what we have all been saying since the like introduction of the Fox or Disney buying Fox? That the only way this will make sense logically is if they're in a different universe or different timeline or something.
Well, I'm not even saying it's a different timeline. I'm saying that if like the main timeline has been like damaged thanks to these like reality bombs that Lady Loki has dropped, then if they fix the timeline, do they fix it in a way where like it's fixed, but there's like these changes that have happened?
Man,
you were thinking about that.
Real sweaty now. We're getting real sweaty now.
If WandaVision taught me anything,
or Kang is the Timekeepers, and he needs mutants to not exist in his timeline for him to come out on top. So that's why he's gotten rid of all the mutants. And when he fails, the mutants will come back. Boom. We'll see you guys next week.
All right, you want to score this episode?
Yeah, you go first because I'm still thinking about it. You know what? I got it. I got it. I'm going to give this episode a 9. We
Okay.
give this episode a 9. I think it is overall better than last week's episode, and I thought last week's episode was damn near perfect. It was just too uneven in the beginning. It's not as solid as last week's episode, I'll say that, but it follows through better, I think, than last week's episode did for sure.
Yeah.
And it's got me even more excited while feeling satisfied.
I think if I were to score this, I would probably give it a 7 as well.
Interesting. 7. That's a new number for you.
It's exactly what I gave the last one. I know. Sure. While I think this episode was uneven, I think the highs from this one were better than the highs from the one before.
Better than the robot question?
Yes. I thought the questions it asked were better. I thought the acting performances were better. I thought the way the story moved was better. We got, I didn't walk away from this being like nothing happened. Like, overall, I walked out of this more satisfied while still acknowledging that the lows in this episode were lower than the lows from the last one. So I think 7 is kind of fair for me.
I agree with that. I think I kind of agree with everything you're saying as far as I think the lows in this are lower than last week, but the highs in this are higher than last week.
Basically,
I just enjoyed it to a different extent that you
and
did.
I are both comparing it to the last episode, and
which is all we can do at this point.
Yeah,
right?
but your last episode
was much higher.
Was much higher than mine. So that's where we are.
So we're pretty consistent from last week to this week. Is what you're
that's
saying.
kind of where I'm getting.
All right. Well,
last question for you before we go.
Sure.
So, going back to what you were talking about before, hypothetically, if you were to meet an alternate timeline variant of yourself and it was a girl, you would definitely date her, right? That's what I heard.
Well, hold
that's
on,
what I heard
hold
you were
on,
saying. Like, that's okay.
Does she look as good as me? That's the question.
I'll let you guys answer that in the comments.
Leave it in the comment section below.
Be sure to check us out next week.
But in all seriousness, guys, if you're enjoying our videos, make sure you leave a like. It definitely helps us out. Comment down below. Let us know what you want to see from the channel and stuff like that. If you're enjoying our reviews, if you're enjoying our other shows, just let us know.
All right. Next week, we've got the next episode of Loki. We've got
a Recommends podcast coming on.
Recommends pod. We've got the news pod coming up this weekend. So lots more stuff coming out. We'll stay tuned, and we'll see you guys then.
See you guys.